Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us here today. I want to thank and welcome our Lieutenant Governor, Austin Davis. I want to thank and welcome the Jewish Legislative Caucus. And I want to thank and welcome this bipartisan group of lawmakers from the House and Senate who stand with me here today, who show by their presence here today that even in these polarized times, Pennsylvania's elected leaders are united in supporting Israel and standing against terror. I'm especially grateful for the leadership of my dear friends, Representative Dan Frankel and Senator Judy Schwank. You'll hear from each of them in a moment. They took a leadership role in each of their chambers, together with these other leaders here with me today, to make sure that lawmakers spoke with a unified voice in passing these resolutions here next to me. In a moment today that requires moral clarity, I want you to know that you are joined, each of these lawmakers here and all of you, by thousands of Pennsylvanians who have rallied in different cities and towns all across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, from Pittsburgh to State College, from Allentown to Lower Merion, where Lori and I and our children were last Monday evening. We are sending collectively a strong message throughout our Commonwealth and our country that we stand united against terror and united with Israel. I know that this here feels very personal to each of us, those who are assembled up here today and those of you who join us in the audience. I know that while it may feel personal, it also feels quite different to each and every one of you, because Israel means something different to each of us. Israel's a special place. It's a place where some of us have made friends and spent meaningful time. I know that many of us right now are worried about our friends and loved ones who quite literally live in a war zone there. Or Israel's a place you've never been, but you're here today because you recognize its critical role in the world and what Israel represents across the globe: freedom, democracy, and quite literally in its national symbol, an olive branch of peace. Those are values that we as Americans and we as Pennsylvanians hold dear, values that have served as the basis of this Commonwealth for 341 years, since William Penn first arrived with a vision of a colony built on a promise of religious tolerance and understanding. We gather here in the governor's reception room, which I'm honored to occupy, with murals along the ceiling here depicting Penn's journey to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where he wanted to establish a place that was welcoming for all. Those values, well, they may be more important today than ever before. You see, I believe our shared history as Pennsylvanians is an important reminder that when we see hate and intimidation targeting our Jewish neighbors or our Muslim neighbors, that we must unequivocally call that out. Whether it's at a synagogue in Berks County or on the steps of the Capitol right here, hate and threats of violence against anyone because of what they look like or where they come from, who they love or who they pray to or choose not to pray to, well, that hate is unacceptable. And I believe I can speak on behalf of all the lawmakers who are here today, those who target our neighbors should be held accountable to the fullest extent under the law. I believe this is a moment where we must stay true to Penn's values of tolerance and understanding. We must ensure that all peace-loving people here in Pennsylvania feel safe, no matter where they are. Today, 3.5 centuries after Penn arrived here, I'm honored to both be the 48th governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and a proud American Jew. Every day, the First Lady and I are humbled by this honor the Commonwealth has given us to serve as the governor and to live in the governor's residence. It is there where we gathered recently with a broad swath of the community from here in the Harrisburg area to celebrate the Jewish holiday of Sukkot. We built a sukkah, and we're told that it's the first ever on the grounds here in our state capital. While that joy we experienced, that moment where we invited the community in to celebrate with us, has obviously given way to sadness and anger. I wanted to share that story with you because this, I believe, is a moment not to retreat from who you are, but to embrace it, to be proud of it, but also to find ways to bring others together who join in common purpose. And our common purpose here in Pennsylvania is recognition, tolerance, and peace. Yes, we should be proud of who we are, as I certainly am, but we should never, ever allow that to stop us from reaching out to others who may be different than us. This is a moment for all of us to be welcoming for others who, like Penn, are tolerant, and we want to invite them in. Pennsylvania should be a place for all. I'm proud to serve as its governor and proud to convey that message that was first brought here by Penn 3.5 centuries ago. I'm inspired by all of the people who are here today, many of whom, like me, are proud American Jews, but I'm equally inspired by those who don't look like me or don't worship like me, but have come here in that spirit of Penn to lift your voices up against hate and terror. Because I believe right now is a moment where it's on all of us to speak and act with moral clarity, as lawmakers did right here in our state capitol this week. We must condemn the horrific acts of war perpetrated by Hamas and their enablers, acts of war felt across the globe. Yes, of course, more than 1,000 Israelis are among the dead and captured, but so are our fellow Americans, as well as British and French, Canadian, Mexican, and so many other nationalities. You see, this is truly an international time of mourning for what we are witnessing. And these unprovoked attacks on innocent civilians warrant clear condemnation and outrage here in America and across the globe. Sadly, as we have seen, that's not the case everywhere. So I'd like to speak some truth here in the governor's reception room. There is no moral equivalency between Hamas, a foreign terrorist organization as designated by the United States of America, and Israel, the only pluralistic functioning democracy in the Middle East. Hamas is hell-bent on destroying Israel and ridding the region of Jews. They do not seek peace, and they do not seek any type of lasting compromise. Instead, they launched an unprovoked and unjustified attack against Israel and its people. Let's be clear. Taking innocent civilians hostage, that is terrorism. And right now, the U.S. government has said at least 13 Americans are unaccounted for as Hamas terrorists hold them hostage. Slaughtering a peaceful concert goer, killing women and children and families in a kibbutz where they live, that is terrorism, plain and simple. And I think it is on all of us to call out what is so obviously wrong and what is right. The whataboutism that is used by some to justify Hamas's unprovoked actions is both ignorant and wrong, and it demonstrates a clear lack of understanding of the real history in the Middle East. Or, worse yet, it shows a willful blindness to the barbarism that we have seen at the hands of Hamas since they attacked. There is no moral equivalency here between Hamas and Israel. And let's also recognize that not every Palestinian is a member of Hamas, and they do not represent all Palestinians. Israel has a right to defend itself in the face of this unprovoked terrorist attack. America has a clear self-interest, bringing our American hostages home, defeating terrorism, and supporting democracy around the globe. I so appreciate that the Biden administration is providing meaningful military and diplomatic support toward that aim. You know, in the face of these gruesome images on our screens and, of course, the promises of more horror to come, I've talked to many across our Commonwealth who feel really hopeless and helpless right now. They feel angry and they feel sad. And together, I know we all mourn the loss of all innocent lives. Know that we, all of your elected leaders, well, we hear your voices in their districts and all across this Commonwealth. And your state lawmakers, well, they have acted based on your voices. They have lifted up your voices in these resolutions that passed in each chamber overwhelmingly. Your voices have been heard. So to any Pennsylvanian who feels helpless right now, know that in lifting up your voices across our communities, these leaders heard you and they acted, and your voices were heard right here in our state capitol. And what I heard in our state capitol, what's depicted on these murals above me, is that we collectively, Republican, Democrat, House, Senate, and the governor's office, stand together on the side of freedom, on the side of tolerance, and on the side of peace. Together, we mourn the lives lost, and may God comfort those who are in mourning, bless those who are suffering, and lift up those with the courage that they need to combat terror across the globe. Thank you for being with us today, and it's important for me now that you hear from the two leaders in the General Assembly who saw to it that your voices would be heard in the form of these resolutions. First, I want to bring up Senator Judy Schwenk, and then you'll hear from Representative Dan Frankel. Senator Schwenk.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm State Senator Judy Schwenk. As the governor mentioned, I serve as the senator for the 11th District of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which encompasses the city of Reading, and I'm a member of Kesher Zion Synagogue. I'm here today with certainly our leader of the Democratic caucus, Senator Jay Costa, a very good friend, Senator Costa, and I want you to know that the co-sponsor, a prime sponsor rather, on the resolution that you see displayed here and that was passed unanimously in the Senate was also written with my friend and colleague, Senator Steve Sanasario, who could not be here today, but I certainly wanted to mention him. And as we all know, yesterday both the House and Senate passed resolutions condemning the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack on Israel. And I'm thankful to all of the folks behind me, mostly House members, for their support and even for being here today. Yesterday, we saw Democrats and Republicans from all over the Commonwealth stand together and say that we will not accept acts of violence and hate. We're not going to ignore it. To put it simply, the barbaric acts committed by Hamas have no place anywhere in the world today. Their intention was not only to obliterate Israel, but to strike fear in the hearts of Israelis and Jews all over the world. They have not succeeded. Instead, countries all over the world, including the United States, have expressed strong support for the people of Israel and reaffirmed Israel's right to not only defend itself, but to exist. To Jewish people throughout the diaspora, Israel is our Jewish homeland. I can vividly recall my father of blessed memory, after returning from a visit in Israel in the 60s, exclaiming to my brothers and I, how in Israel, even the policemen are Jews. It was such a shock to him. He was in awe by how this was a country that not only welcomed Jews, but was actually created for them. We have watched with great pride as this young nation, only 75 years old, established itself as a beacon of democracy in the Middle East. We have actively supported Israel's powerhouse economic growth in diverse fields like medicine, computer science, and even agricultural production. We have cheered as survivors of the Shoah, Russian refuseniks, and Jews throughout the world living under the threat of anti-Semitism and oppression have established new homes in Israel. Israel is in our hearts. We have many relatives and friends who have made Aliyah. relocating to the land to build a new future in a Jewish state, or who live part-time there. This includes thousands of Pennsylvanians. And as we know, so many of them, not necessarily just Pennsylvanians, have been engaged in what has happened in Israel and have faced this terrorism. So our ties with Israel are deeply intertwined in our lives. When Representative Frankel and I formed the Jewish Legislative Caucus earlier this year, we did so with the goal of uniting a group of lawmakers and standing firm against anti-Semitism, which we all know is alive and well in Pennsylvania and across the United States. Indeed, there was a bomb threat last Shabbat at my synagogue in Reading. The Jewish Legislative Caucus stands against all forms of hate-based violence. For many reasons, we felt compelled to offer resolutions condemning the violence perpetrated by Hamas. And to see you all here today you're the wind behind our backs in terms of ensuring that this was the right thing to do. But most importantly, and we can't lose sight of this too, both resolutions call for the United States government to do all it can to broker a lasting and meaningful peace and put an end to the bloodshed we have witnessed not only over the past week and a half, but for years and years and millennia. In my synagogue in Reading, we read a prayer which ends with the words of the prophet Isaiah, and I think they're very appropriate here today. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. You know this, you probably say it in your synagogue too. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. For the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness, calm and confidence forever. Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure and real honor to introduce my friend, too, and colleague over in the House, Chairman Dan Frankel. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Schwank, and thank you from the bottom of my heart, Governor Shapiro, for doing this and for standing up for the right things all the time, and in particular at this trying time for the Jewish community here and internationally. I'm also gratified to be here with a number of my colleagues, and as you heard earlier, we had a unanimous vote in the House, a unanimous vote in the Senate. On behalf of these two resolutions, I want to thank my Republican colleague and co-prime sponsor, Representative Coffer, who is with us here today, for the work he did helping move this through the Republican caucus. Also with us today are the Speaker of the House, who I'm proud to work with every day, Joanna McClinton. You can clap. Other leaders of our caucus are here as well. Jordan Harris, we have Ryan Bizzarro, I have also Representative Schusterman, Burgos, Waxman, Salisbury, Sanchez, Representative Davis, Webster, Representative Davis, also a member of leadership, Representative Webster, Briggs, Solomon, Marligari. Those are the folks I saw before I left it. And probably Leader Bradford as well. Leader Bradford.
He's wearing a tie. Yeah.
That's true. So I'm very grateful to have them here. It means a lot that not only did that we all worked together to get this done, but that they spent the time to come here today. And I also want to thank all of you for being here as I look out among you and see your posters of those who have been kidnapped. My sister, Janina, lives in Tel Aviv with her family. And she posts these kidnapping posters and the biographies of those who were murdered on October 7th. I also want to thank the Pennsylvania Jewish Coalition for all the work that they did. We have Mr. Goldman, who's the president of the PJC, and the executive director, Hank Butler. So thank you both for all the work that you've done here as well. It's been 11 days since a diverse crowd of young people at an all-night dance party in Israel was trapped by terrorists and gunned down en masse. More than 260 young people murdered in that field. More murdered in bomb shelters. They were hunted down. Their final moments, pure horror. They could have been my children, or they could have been yours. A family of 5, including 6-year-old twin girls and their 4-year-old brother, messaged their loved ones that they were in a safe place in their home. Hamas terrorists found them and killed them all. People were shot in their cars and killed on the street. At one bus stop, 7 Israeli civilians lay dead. Military forensic teams examining the bodies found signs of torture and rape. One elderly woman was murdered, and her attackers posted a video of her body on her own Facebook page for her family to see. When my grandparents and future in-laws fled Eastern Europe and Germany in the 1930s, they had witnessed escalating abuses against Jews. From my family's side, from their resettled home in Peru, which they needed to go through because they could not get a visa to the United States, they read the news helplessly as everyone they left behind, everyone they knew, was murdered. Jews could not defend themselves. Escape was the only way to survive. Many American Jews watched scenes from Hamas's horrific acts, feeling something like what my family experienced and your families experienced all those years ago, when Jewish storefronts were smashed to bits and community members were stolen out of their beds. But today, Jewish people in Israel are defending themselves as Jews could not 75 years ago. They are fighting Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization. And they are fighting to rescue 200 hostages held in unknown conditions for 11 days now. I want to be clear that Hamas's attack was no expression of the Muslim faith, a religion of peace that these murderers try to twist to suit their bloodthirsty ends. Hamas's stated goal is to eradicate Jews, and they will cause limitless suffering to achieve it. They care not for civilians or human life. This organization is a danger to Israelis and a danger to Palestinians. And if we don't speak out, they're also a danger to our own humanity. Their use of human shields goes back years. They are actively blocking Palestinians from fleeing to safety. The destruction of Jews is not a means to an end for Hamas. It is the whole point. Soon I will join with neighbors and friends and strangers and remember 11 people murdered in their synagogue in my community exactly 5 years ago as a gunman shouted, "All Jews must die." Since Hamas's attack, people in Pittsburgh grieve anew. My community feels panic. People all over Pennsylvania feel panic. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of Holocaust survivors deserve to hear from their leaders that the slaughter of dancing college kids is not justifiable. And that's why we are all here today. That the capture and imprisonment of civilian hostages is not a legitimate form of political protest. That Israel has a right and a responsibility to defend itself and to fight for the hostages that were ripped from their homes and neighborhoods. I'm deeply grateful that every last one of my colleagues joined me and Judy Schwank yesterday to stand with Israel, which was forced into a war that it did not want or did not seek. We also pray for the safe return of hostages and for the safety of civilians of every faith and every nation. Here at home, I will continue my work on hate crimes. We know that this conflict stands to inflame existing hatred, like anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and I am determined to make sure that this Commonwealth has the tools it needs to keep all our vulnerable communities safe. So I want to thank all of you once again, and my colleagues and we will move on from this in unity. And I thank you all.